Welcome back to Mr. John Stories, where life's most powerful lessons come wrapped in unforgettable tales. If you're new here, thank you so much for joining the family. Please hit the subscribe button so we can keep sharing inspiring stories like this with you on YouTube. The wind carried a sharp chill through the streets of Baltimore that afternoon, but that wasn't what made Zanaya's breath hitch. At 8 months pregnant, she moved slower now, yet here she was, kneeling on the cold sidewalk, one hand bracing her belly, the other reaching toward a man most people had already dismissed. Groceries were scattered across the concrete, a crushed loaf of bread, a leaking carton of milk, cans rolling lazily toward the gutter. The man beside her trembled as he struggled to sit upright, his ankle twisted at an odd angle and his hands shaking from the pain. Dirt streaked his jacket, and his eyes held a dazed confusion that made it clear he was in trouble. But the crowd around them didn't care. A cluster of onlookers stood a few steps away, smirking, whispering, tossing out little insults as if the scene were entertainment. "He can't even stand straight," one man scoffed. A woman with a loud voice took it further. "Girl, leave him. He's drunk trash." People laughed. No one stepped forward. That was the moment everything shifted. Zanaya lifted her head, her eyes sharp and steady. "He's a human being," she snapped, her voice cutting through the noise so clearly that every person nearby froze. Conversations stopped. Laughter died off. For a heartbeat, the entire sidewalk fell quiet around her. A heavily pregnant woman kneeling beside a stranger, refusing to move despite the cold, despite the judgment, despite the weight pressing on her ribs and lower back. It was a sight strong enough to silence an entire block. But she didn't flinch. Not for the crowd. Not for the insults. Not for the discomfort tightening across her belly. "Sir," she said softly, turning her focus back to the man, "I've got you. I'm not leaving." And in that frozen moment, everyone watching realized she meant it. Have you ever stopped to help someone everyone else walked past? Have you ever been judged for choosing kindness over convenience? Those questions hung in the air as the man beside Zanaya tried once again to sit up straighter. His face tightened from the effort. He reached instinctively toward his pockets, patting them with rising panic. "My phone. My wallet." "They're gone," he whispered, eyes darting around as if the items might magically appear. "I can't remember a single number. I don't even know who to call." Before Zanaya could respond, his entire body swayed. Hey, don't fall," she breathed, trying to catch him as he slumped sideways. For a terrifying second, she nearly lost her balance. Her sneakers slid on the damp concrete, the weight of her belly shifting forward as she pulled him toward her. The pressure shot up her spine, but she tightened her grip anyway. She refused to let him hit the ground again. "Stay with me," she urged, bracing her knee and pushing herself upright. He leaned heavily against her shoulder, breath shallow, confusion clouding his expression. The world around them seemed to narrow into this one fragile point, a pregnant woman holding up a stranger twice her size, determined to keep him steady. But the moment shattered when a teenager from the edge of the dispersing crowd stepped forward, quick and bold. He snatched a can of soup from the sidewalk, then reached for the man's remaining groceries as if he had every right to take them. "Hey!" Zanaya barked, shifting her weight and stepping in front of the scattered food. Her hand instinctively flew to her belly as she moved, a protective gesture, sharp and immediate. The teen smirked, shrugging. "He doesn't need this." "Look at him. Back off," she said, her voice low but blazing with conviction. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Something in her tone, steady, fierce, absolutely unshakable, made the boy stop mid-reach. He glared for a moment, then stepped away with an irritated scoff. But he didn't dare come closer. The crowd that had mocked minutes earlier suddenly had nothing to say. There stood Zanaya, heavily pregnant, exhausted, shaking a little from strain. She positioned herself between the fallen groceries and the stranger leaning against her shoulder, and she looked around the street as if daring anyone else to try something. No one did. What if the man she rescued isn't who the world assumed he was? What if this moment, right here on this cold Baltimore street, is the beginning of something far bigger than either of them can see. Waltz shifted against her shoulder, breathing through the pain, his voice barely above a whisper. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cause you trouble." "You didn't," Zanaya said gently, tightening her hold so he wouldn't slip again. "You're not alone out here. Not while I'm standing." Her words weren't dramatic. They were honest. The kind of truth that settles inside a person and stays there. A passing bus roared by, sending a gust of wind through her braids. But she didn't move an inch. She held him steady, even as her lower back throbbed and the baby pressed upward beneath her ribs. The crowd watched her, truly watched her, for the first time. "Come on," she murmured to the trembling man beside her. "Let's get you off this sidewalk before you get hurt again." Her determination was calm, unshaken, almost instinctive. "Stay with me. Because where this story goes next will leave you breathless. A beat of silence. A shift in the music. The emotional hook tightening perfectly. Darling viewers, please like this video and comment, "I'm watching." It truly helps this channel share more heartfelt stories with amazing people like you. With that, the scene faded, Waltz leaning on her for support, Zanaya guiding him step by careful step, and the real story was ready to begin. The cold from the sidewalk still pressed into Zanaya's knees as she steadied her breath, adjusting her balance so the weight of her belly didn't pull her forward. Waltz leaned against her shoulder, trying to gather enough strength to sit upright, but every movement sent a sharp tremor through him. His ankle was swollen, his hands scraped from the fall, and his clothes carried the dust of a rough afternoon no one had cared enough to question. But she cared. She wasn't going anywhere. The last of the mocking voices drifted away as the small crowd finally dispersed, leaving only scattered groceries behind. The loaf of bread lay half-flattened near the curb, and a can of soup rocked gently until it settled. For a moment all Zanaya could hear was the uneven sound of Waltz's breathing and the distant hum of city traffic. "You doing okay?" she murmured, grounding her voice. "Just stay with me." Waltz tried shifting his weight again, but the pain shot up his leg and he winced so sharply that Zanaya instinctively tightened her hold on him. You shouldn't be helping me like this," he whispered, face tight with embarrassment and discomfort. "I'm making this harder for you." Zanaya shook her head once, firm and calm. "I wouldn't be here if I didn't want to be." Her tone carried no hesitation. "Now, let me check your ankle." She eased him carefully to the side, bracing his upper arm so he wouldn't topple backward. Baltimore's late afternoon light caught the edge of his face, tired, stressed, and filled with the kind of confusion that usually followed a sudden loss of control. He didn't look reckless. He didn't look careless. He looked human and exhausted. Her fingers hovered near the injured ankle without touching it. "You're swelling fast. Did you hit the pavement hard?" "I think so," he muttered. "Everything happened so quickly, and when I fell, people just stood there." He looked away, jaw tightening. Some even laughed. Zanaya felt a familiar burn in her chest, the kind that came whenever she saw someone treated like they didn't matter. She remembered the woman shouting to leave him, remembered how casually the world turned its back on someone who needed help. It stirred something deep inside her, a reminder of how many times she'd seen compassion replaced with coldness. "Well, they're not here anymore," she said, "and I'm not leaving you sitting out here in this cold." He met her eyes then. Not with pity, not with fear, but with a quiet disbelief that someone would choose to stay. That was the moment she felt the first thread of connection between them, thin but meaningful. A moment that would have slipped away completely if she'd walked past like everyone else. "Can you stand?" she asked. "I can try." She adjusted her grip around his arm, planting her feet so her balance stayed solid. She felt the baby shift slightly, a small reminder that her body was working double, but she didn't let that slow her movements. "All right, on 3, she said gently. 1, 2, 3, Waltz pushed upward. His good leg held, but the injured one buckled, sending his weight heavily against her. For a split second she felt her back strain, and her breath caught in her throat. But she tightened her core, straightened her posture, and held her ground. "You've got me," she reassured him, steady as a pillar. He exhaled shakily, leaning just enough to stay upright without collapsing. "I don't know how you're doing this," he murmured. "You're lighter than you think," she said, giving him the faintest smile. "Now, we're going to move slowly. There's a bench just ahead." The walk was painstaking. Small steps, pauses, careful shifts in balance, but they made it. When they reached the bench, she guided him down gently, letting him settle before sinking onto the other end with a tired sigh. Her hand instinctively went to her belly again, rubbing lightly to ease the pressure. Waltz watched her with concern. "Did I hurt you?" "No," she said simply. "You're safe. That's what matters." He swallowed hard, emotion flickering behind his eyes. "You didn't have to step in. You didn't even know me." "Wouldn't change a thing," she replied. "You needed help. That's enough." Her voice carried no hesitation, no doubt. Only conviction. A conviction that stunned him quiet. For a few moments the world slowed around them. The city kept moving. Buses roaring, horns sounding, footsteps echoing, but here on this small bench, it felt like everything had paused long enough for them to breathe again. That was the moment the emotional thread between them strengthened. Not dramatic, not romantic, just real, genuine. A connection that rose naturally out of kindness. She looked at the scattered groceries still lying in the street and sighed. "Let me get those." Before he could argue, she stood and walked carefully to gather the surviving items, placing them neatly into the torn bag. When she returned, she set the bag beside him and sat again, her breath steady. "We're not done," she said. "We'll get you somewhere warm. But first, you need to rest." He nodded, grateful in a way he struggled to express, and as the street settled into a gentler rhythm around them, one truth became clear. Zanaya was not leaving this man. Not now. Not ever while he needed her. Zanaya steadied herself on the edge of the bench, inhaling slowly as the baby shifted again. She pressed a hand to her lower belly, waiting for the tightness to ease. Waltz watched her with worry written across his face, but she gave him a quiet nod, reassuring him before he even spoke. "I'm okay," she said softly. "The walk just took a little energy. But don't worry about me." Her voice remained warm, solid. "Right now, we need to get you someplace safe." Waltz swallowed, still embarrassed by how much he depended on her. His gaze drifted to his injured ankle, then back to her. "I don't want you to strain yourself," he murmured. "You've already done so much." "Well, we're not leaving you out here," she replied firmly, pushing herself upright. "My house isn't far, just a few blocks. We'll take it slow." She didn't wait for an argument. She extended her hand. Waltz hesitated only a moment before taking it, letting her guide him upward. The pressure on her knees made her wince, but she hid it quickly. Once he was standing, he rested one arm over her shoulder, lighter this time, trying not to weigh her down. "Lean on me," she said, adjusting her balance so she could support him comfortably. "I've got you." They moved together in short, careful steps down the sidewalk. Baltimore evenings had a way of settling into a familiar rhythm. Distant traffic, the chatter of neighbors, the fading warmth of sunlight bouncing off brick row homes. As they walked, Waltz glanced occasionally at Zanaya, marveling quietly at her steady presence. Every few feet she asked gently, "You good?" And each time he nodded, because somehow with her he was. The slower their pace, the easier their conversation flowed between breaths. "You didn't have to take this much trouble for me," he said after a block, voice low. "Waltz," she replied, shaking her head a little. "If I were the one injured, wouldn't you want someone to help me?" His brows knit softly. "Yes, I would." He didn't answer, but something softened in him, a quiet acceptance of her kindness. By the time they reached her block, the street lamps were flickering on. Children played on stoops, neighbors watered plants, and the faint smell of someone's dinner filled the air. It was familiar to her, comforting. To Waltz, it felt like stepping into someone else's world, warmer than his own. "We're almost there," she told him. They reached her home, a cozy brick townhouse with a wreath hanging on the door and soft light glowing from the window. She unlocked it and nudged the door open with her hip. "Come in," she whispered, guiding him gently over the threshold. The interior held a lived-in charm. Soft colors, family photos, a warm scent of vanilla lingering in the air. It felt like a home that carried love in its corners. Waltz whispered, "It's really beautiful in here." "Thank you," she said, easing him onto the couch. "Now sit. Don't move. Let me get you something for that ankle." He watched her walk toward a small linen closet, noticed the slight wobble in her step, and felt another wave of guilt. But she returned with a dish towel and a bag of frozen peas, wrapping them carefully before placing the cool bundle against his swollen ankle. He exhaled in relief. "That should help until it settles," she said, brushing her hands clean. "Now, how about dinner? You must be hungry. You don't have to cook," he protested gently. "I know," she replied, already turning toward the kitchen. "But I want to—" As she prepared the meal, Waltz listened to the soft clatter of pans and the rhythmic sound of vegetables being chopped. He found himself strangely comforted, as if he had stumbled into a snapshot of peace he hadn't felt in years. "Can I help?" he called out. "Nope," she insisted. "Your job is to rest." He chuckled softly and leaned back into the couch cushions. When she returned with 2 plates, he quickly sat up straighter. The food smelled wonderful. Simple, homemade, perfectly warm. They ate together, the quiet between them comfortable. Waltz glanced at her several times, noticing how she carried herself. Strong, calm, but tired in a way she didn't complain about. "This is really good," he said. "Thank you," she replied, smiling. "Just a quick dinner. Nothing fancy. It feels homey," he admitted. Her smile softened, and a shy warmth flickered between them, subtle but real. Halfway through the meal, she gently said, "By the way, sweetheart, if you're still watching this story, please tap that like button and drop a comment below. It helps us keep sharing stories like this with you." Her tone was natural, warm, a perfect CTA woven seamlessly into the moment. As the last bites disappeared, she stood again. "Let me get some water." Waltz shook his head. "Zanaya, please, sit for a minute. You've been up and moving all day." She hesitated, then laughed softly and lowered herself back onto the couch. "Fine, just for a minute." Their eyes met again. Not romantic, not forced. Just 2 tired souls recognizing something familiar in each other. The room grew quieter, kinder, safer. Waltz glanced toward the pull-out couch tucked neatly under the cushions he was sitting on. "I'll take the couch tonight, if that's still okay." She nodded gently. "It's all yours." Outside, the Baltimore streetlights glowed softly against the night. Inside, the first threads of trust had already begun weaving between them, not rushed, not forced, but unmistakably real. The night deepened outside Zanaya's windows, turning the streetlights into soft halos that glowed against the quiet Baltimore neighborhood. Inside, the warm lamps in her living room cast a gentle light across the walls, giving the space an inviting calm. Waltz shifted slightly on the couch, adjusting his bad ankle while trying not to disturb the peace that had settled between them. "Are you sure you're comfortable?" Zanaya asked as she returned from the hallway, carrying a folded quilt and 2 pillows tucked under her arm. "Much more than before," Waltz answered with a small smile. "Thank you again. For everything today." She placed the pillows on the pull-out section of the couch, then glanced toward him with a look that mixed reassurance and quiet reflection. "You've had a long day, Waltz. Rest is the least you deserve." She pulled the couch bed open with a soft, steady motion, careful not to strain her back. Waltz instinctively tried to help, leaning forward slightly, but she waved him off immediately. "Nope. Stay seated," she insisted, her tone firm but warm. "You're injured. I'm not letting you make it worse." He lowered himself back against the cushions, watching her with a growing respect he couldn't quite put into words. She was exhausted. He could see it in the slight heaviness around her eyes and in the slow exhale she released every few minutes. But she carried herself with a strength that filled the room. When the pull-out bed was fully arranged, she sat down again on the far end of the couch, one hand resting gently on her belly. A soft kick pressed against her palm, and she gave a little smile.
"Oh, she's active tonight,"
Waltz observed quietly. "Or he," she corrected with a grin. "Either way, this baby doesn't believe in rest." He chuckled. "Maybe they're excited to get here." "Maybe," she murmured, gently rubbing the curve of her stomach. "Or maybe they're warning me to sit down more often." Silence settled in again, but not the uncomfortable kind. Instead, it felt like a shared breath after a day filled with unexpected turns. Waltz watched the way the lamplight warmed her features, the softness in her eyes, the determination beneath her calm. "You know," Waltz began quietly, "I don't think I've met anyone quite like you." She arched a brow lightly. Meaning, he said slowly, choosing his words carefully. "When I was on that sidewalk, you didn't hesitate. Even though you're expecting a child, even though people were saying awful things, you still helped me. Most people wouldn't have." Zainaya looked down briefly, embarrassed by the praise. "I just did what I hoped someone else would do if I were in that situation." "That's exactly what I mean," he replied. "It takes a good heart to think that way." She held his gaze for a moment before whispering, "I'm glad I was there. You didn't deserve what happened today." Waltz nodded, though the tension in his shoulders betrayed how deeply the earlier humiliation still lingered. It just felt like everything hit at once. Falling. Losing my things. People laughing. I don't know why it bothered me so much, but it did. "It bothered you because you're human," she said gently. "Pain hurts. Cruelty hurts. Anyone would feel it." He exhaled slowly, and for the first time since they'd met, Walt seemed to let down a part of his guard. Not fully, but enough that she could see the tiredness behind his eyes, a tiredness that wasn't just physical. "Thank you, Zainaya," he said softly, "for staying, for caring, for seeing me." She smiled, small, sincere. "You're welcome." Another light kick pressed against her hand, and she let out a tiny gasp. "You all right?" he asked, concerned. "Yeah," she laughed, easing back into her seat. "Just my little gymnast reminding me that space is limited." Waltz let out a small, warm laugh. "You're doing an amazing job. Truly." A visible softness washed over her expression at that. Compliments about her strength had been rare lately. Most people commented on her appearance, her size, or asked intrusive questions. Waltz's words landed differently, more thoughtful, more grounded. "Thank you," she whispered. They sat together in that soft glow a little longer, letting the quiet carry them. Outside, a car rolled down the street, its engine fading into the distance. Inside, the faint ticking of a wall clock served as the only background sound. Eventually, Zainaya pushed herself to her feet, with slow, careful movements. "All right, you need rest, and I need to lie down before my back starts arguing with me." Waltz shifted forward, preparing to settle into the couch bed. "If you need anything in the night, water, help, anything, wake me." Her brows lifted. "You? Help me?" "I can still do a little," he said with a shy grin, "even if I'm lopsided at the moment." She laughed, a warm, genuine laugh, and it eased something deep in his chest. "Well, that's kind," she said. "I'll keep it in mind." She started toward her bedroom doorway, stopping halfway to look back at him. "Good night, Waltz." He met her gaze with quiet sincerity. "Good night, Zainaya." She turned off all but a small hallway nightlight, leaving the living room in a soft, gentle dimness. Her bedroom door remained slightly ajar, just enough for her to hear if he needed anything. Waltz eased himself down onto the pull-out bed, settling the quilt over his legs. The room was peaceful, and for the first time all day, he felt safe. Truly safe. He stared up at the ceiling, listening to the faint sound of Zainaya moving around in her room. A strange comfort settled into him, unexpected, but real. Two strangers, under one roof, both carrying private battles neither had spoken aloud, neither aware that today was the beginning of a connection that would change everything. Waltz closed his eyes, and sleep found him easily. Zinaya woke to the soft hum of her heater turning on, warming the quiet morning air that drifted through the hallway. She pushed herself upright slowly, hand pressed against her lower back, feeling the familiar ache that came with being 8 months pregnant. Outside her bedroom, the faint scent of something comforting. Maybe vanilla, maybe the lingering aroma of last night's dinner, floated gently into the room. She slipped her feet into her slippers and stepped into the hallway, leaving the door half open just as she had last night. A small nightlight glowed near the bathroom, casting a warm path toward the living room. Waltz was already awake. He sat on the edge of the pull-out couch, gently adjusting the wrapped ankle she'd treated. His posture was careful, as if he didn't want to disturb the peacefulness of the home. When he looked up and saw her, he offered a shy smile, soft and genuine. "Good morning," he said, voice still carrying the quiet of the early hour. "Morning," she replied, returning the smile. "How'd you sleep?" "Better than I expected," he admitted. "Your couch bed is surprisingly comfortable. That thing has saved my back more times than I can count," she joked lightly. She walked toward the kitchen, one palm bracing her belly. Waltz instinctively rose to help, but she lifted her hand gently. "You sit. I've got this." "But you shouldn't." "Waltz," she interrupted with a raised brow. "I've been pregnant for 8 months. I know what I can handle." "Sit." He obeyed, but the way he watched her held a quiet admiration, something he didn't intend to show but couldn't quite hide. A few minutes later, she carried 2 plates to the table, pancakes, eggs, and a bit of fruit she sliced quickly. Waltz stood to take one of the plates from her hands. "You didn't have to cook this much," he murmured. "I wanted to. Besides, I never get to cook for anyone in the morning." He paused at that, eyes softening. As they ate, the atmosphere grew warm, easy, the kind of comfort that rarely appeared between two people who'd only known each other a single day. Every now and then, Zinaya let out a gentle laugh, and Waltz found himself smiling without effort. "You know," she said between bites, "you're a much calmer guest than I expected after everything that happened." "Well, I'm trying," he chuckled, "though I still feel guilty you're doing all this for me." "You'll get over it," she teased. "Eat your pancakes." For a moment they sat in comfortable silence, the kind that comes when two people unexpectedly feel at ease in each other's presence. Eventually, Waltz cleared his throat. "I should probably try calling my hotel now. Let them know I'm safe." "Of course." She stood to pass him her phone but paused. "Do you remember any numbers?" "I think maybe 1 or 2, he said, though uncertainty flickered in his expression. He stepped into the living room to dial, keeping his voice low. Zinaya didn't pry, but she listened to the tone of the call, the clipped professionalism in his voice, when someone finally answered on the other end. "This is Waltz," he said quietly. "I lost my things yesterday. I'm safe, but I'll need someone to reach out. Yes, please send help. No details right now." He ended the call and exhaled slowly. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah," he said, returning to the table. "They'll send someone to contact me later today. I didn't reveal too much. I just need time before I explain everything." "I understand," she said softly. "Take your time." Her response eased him. Most people would have demanded answers, but she accepted him exactly as he was in this moment. He took another bite of breakfast, then looked up at her with quiet warmth. "Thank you for this morning. Really, I can't remember the last time I sat at a kitchen table and felt calm." She held his gaze, and something gentle passed between them. Not romance, not yet, but something honest. "You're welcome, Waltz." A small flutter kicked inside her belly, and she pressed a palm there instinctively. He watched with concern. "Everything okay?" "Just the baby waking up," she smiled. "She or he likes to remind me who's running the show." Waltz laughed softly. "Strong personality already." "Oh, definitely." The moment brought a soft glow to the morning, a connection forming that neither of them had planned, yet both felt settling naturally into place. And as they finished breakfast, the day ahead waited, full of errands, discoveries, and the deepening of something they both sensed but didn't yet name. The sun had climbed higher by the time they stepped out onto the sidewalk, the air cool but pleasant, the kind of Baltimore morning that carried a hint of the coming season. Zanaya locked her door, adjusting the strap of her bag over her shoulder while Waltz steadied himself near the railing, careful with his wrapped ankle. "You sure you're up for walking?" she asked. "As long as you don't try to run," he replied lightly. She smirked. "Trust me, darling. At 8 months pregnant, running is not happening." Their shared laugh broke the morning silence and set the tone for the day ahead. They reached the bus stop just as the vehicle approached. Waltz instinctively reached for his wallet, then remembered. Nothing. Zainaya caught the embarrassed downturn of his expression and tapped her bus pass against the reader twice. "I've got you," she said. "But no arguments. This is the easiest part of my day. Let me have my small victory." He surrendered with a quiet grin and followed her to a seat near the window. The bus rumbled forward, passing corner stores, murals, old brick buildings marked with decades of Baltimore history. Waltz watched the city through the glass, seeing a side of life he rarely touched. Ordinary routines, families heading to school, workers grabbing coffee, neighbors greeting each other through car windows. "You ride this a lot?" he asked softly. "When my car's in the shop, yeah," she answered. "Public transportation saves me more than it frustrates me." He nodded, thoughtful. "Must be hard," he added, "especially with the baby coming." She shrugged. "You adjust. That's what single mothers do. You learn to make life work even when the budget doesn't stretch the way you hope." Her words weren't bitter, just honest, and that honesty opened something in him, a deeper awareness of the weight she carried daily. He wanted to say something comforting, something meaningful, but her head had turned toward the window, watching the city blur by. Sometimes silence held more truth than words. The bus dropped them off near a local baby supply shop, its front windows decorated with pastel signs and tiny outfits. As they walked inside, Waltz hesitated, struck by the overwhelming amount of items. Bottles, blankets, cribs, gadgets he couldn't even name. Zinaya noticed his dazed expression. "Welcome to parenting paradise," she teased. "Also known as the place where your bank account weeps." "Noted," he laughed. She led the way through aisles of diapers, wipes, and tiny clothing. Waltz followed closely, occasionally reaching above her head to grab something on a high shelf, or bending carefully to pick up something she pointed at on a low shelf. When she paused in front of a large baby carrier, she ran her fingers along the padding thoughtfully. "That's the one you wanted yesterday, right?" Waltz asked. She nodded slowly. "It's the safest option, but it's—" "Well, you saw the price." He remembered the hesitation she had shown yesterday, the way she had tried to hide disappointment, but couldn't quite do it. Without thinking, he asked, "Why this one?" "Because I want my baby to come home safely," she whispered, more to herself than him. "It's just me, so I can't afford mistakes." Waltz swallowed. Her responsibilities weren't abstract. They were lived, breathed, and carried every day in her body and her decisions. "Let's put it in the cart," he said softly. She blinked. "Waltz." "Please," he insisted, not in a way that pressed guilt, but in a way that said, "Let me help you breathe a little easier." Their eyes held for a moment, something gentle passing between them, a shared understanding. She finally nodded. "Okay, thank you." In the clothing aisle, Walt spotted a tiny onesie with a cartoon lion wearing sunglasses. He held it up. "What about this? Very bold fashion statement." Zanaya laughed so suddenly she had to hold her belly. "My baby is not coming into this world looking like a baby DJ. But imagine the confidence." "Oh, Lord." She shook her head, still laughing. "Put it back, before someone thinks you're serious." Her laughter was the warmest sound he had heard in a long time. They moved toward the register with a cart that was fuller than she expected, more than she would ever let herself buy alone. As the cashier rang everything up, Zanaya pulled out her card, but Waltz touched her wrist gently. "I've got this." She opened her mouth to protest, but his expression left no room for it. Not arrogance, not pity, just quiet sincerity. "Let me do this one thing," he said softly. After a heartbeat, she let her hand fall away. "Thank you, Waltz." He nodded once as if it were the easiest decision he'd made in years. Instead of the bus, Waltz insisted on calling a cab, or rather he asked the cashier to call one, since he still didn't have his phone. "You've done enough walking today," he told Zanaya gently. They settled into the back seat, bags tucked at their feet. The gentle rumble of the car made the ride calm and quiet, until Zanaya finally said, "You didn't have to do all that." "I know," he replied. "Then why did you?" He thought for a moment before answering. "Because you deserved a day where someone made things easier for you." "Thank you," she whispered again. He turned his head toward the window, but not before she caught the warmth in his smile. When they stepped out of the cab, they carried the bags up to her front door together, awkwardly at first, laughing as they tried to figure out how not to drop anything. Before she could reach for her keys, she froze. Music was playing inside. She blinked. "Oh, Imani's here early." Waltz raised a brow. "Should I be nervous?" "Probably," she teased. "But don't worry. She only bites when she doesn't like someone." Waltz paled slightly, which made Zanaya laugh harder. "Relax," she said, unlocking the door. "You'll survive." She pushed the door open, and the moment they stepped inside, a voice called from the living room. "Girl, you finally home?" Imani, bold, lively, and ready. The moment the front door opened, the energy in the house shifted, instantly louder, brighter, and bursting with personality. Imani stood in the middle of the living room, one hand on her hip, the other waving a baby onesie like it was a flag of victory. "There's my mama to be," she exclaimed, turning with a grin that filled the whole space. Her grin faltered only for a split second when she saw Waltz behind Zanaya, arms full of shopping bags. Then her eyes narrowed, sharpened, and sparkled with curiosity all at the same time. "Well, well, well," she said slowly, adjusting her stance. "Who do we have here?" Zanaya let out a breathy laugh. "Imani, don't start—" "Oh, I'm starting," Imani replied, walking over with the confidence of someone who made sure she never missed the details. "You leave your house for a doctor's appointment and a grocery run, and you come back with this man carrying baby bags, like he's interviewing for the Father of the Year award." Waltz froze in the doorway, unsure if he should step forward or retreat back outside. Zanaya gently nudged him. "Come in, Waltz." "Ignore her." "Ignore me?" Imani placed a hand dramatically on her chest. "Girl, you invited me into your life. You don't get to ignore me." She set the onesie down and finally approached Waltz with a mixture of curiosity and scrutiny. "And you," she said, looking him up and down. "Hi, I'm Imani. I ask the real questions around here." Waltz cleared his throat and offered a polite smile. "Nice to meet you. I'm—" "Oh, I know your name," she cut in. Zin said, "Waltz," like it was normal. "Sir, that is not a normal name." Zanaya groaned quietly. "Imani—" "What?" Imani blinked innocently. "I'm just saying what we're all thinking." Waltz let out a small laugh, soft, a little unsure, but genuine. "It's actually a dance term. My mother chose it." Imani's eyes widened. "Oh, so you fancy." Waltz chuckled again. "I wouldn't say that." "I would," Imani replied. "Look at you. Even injured. You look like you walked out of a magazine." Zanaya shot her a look. "Can you behave for 5 minutes?" "No," Imani said. "Absolutely not." Once the playful back and forth eased, Imani's expression shifted just enough to reveal her protective instinct. She crossed her arms and asked, "So, Waltz, how exactly did you end up attached to my girl here?" Zanaya stepped in before Waltz could respond. He didn't detach himself. I found him hurt yesterday. The crowd wasn't helping him. I stepped in. Imani softened toward Zanaya, but only toward her. Then her gaze snapped right back to Waltz. So you're telling me she dragged you off the sidewalk and fed you? Waltz nodded carefully. That's exactly what happened. Imani pursed her lips. Sounds like her. Imani, Zin started. What? It does. She laughed, throwing her hands up. You've been rescuing stray souls since high school. Waltz tilted his head. She has a pattern? Oh, yes, Imani replied. If there's one person in this city who sees the good in folks before anything else, it's her. Zainaya waved the comment off, cheeks flushing. Don't make it sound like I'm collecting people. Imani rolled her eyes. Girl, you basically adopted him. Waltz smiled gently. She did save me. That statement softened the room. Even Imani's expression changed, just a little. It wasn't planned, Zanaya explained. We had errands. It made sense to stop by the baby store. And he paid? Imani asked bluntly. Zero shame. Waltz and Zanaya exchanged a glance. Yes, Waltz said honestly. Imani's eyebrows shot up so high they nearly touched her hairline. Oh? So he's generous. Imani, Zanaya hissed, mortified. Stop grilling him like you're on some talk show. What? I'm gathering data, Imani said. Then she added under her breath, because something is off, and my friend is too kind to notice. Waltz heard the whisper. She meant him no harm, but she didn't trust easily. And he respected that. He didn't know how to reassure her without revealing too much. So he simply said, I just wanted to help. Imani stared at him for a moment. Long enough that Zinnia began to fidget. Then she finally nodded. All right, I'll give you that one. But I'm watching. Waltz nodded respectfully. Fair. Once they settled, the bags unpacked and placed neatly to the side, the three of them shared a few minutes on the couch. Imani kicked off her shoes. So, Waltz, you from Baltimore? No, just visiting for a few days, he answered. She said, tapping her chin. You don't talk like someone who's just passing through this neighborhood. Waltz kept his expression neutral. I like seeing different parts of the city. Right, she said slowly. But something tells me you came from a very different part of town. The implication hung between them, playful but pointed. Before Waltz could respond, a sudden knock rattled the front door. 3 firm, precise knocks. Imani froze mid-sentence. Who is that? You expecting someone? Waltz's posture straightened, the tension in his shoulders unmistakable. Another knock followed. Same pattern, same firmness. Imani glanced at Waltz, suspicion rising. Hold on. Why do you look like you know who that is? Waltz exhaled slowly. I do. No, Zanaya said, confused. Zanaya stepped toward the door, heart thumping. Waltz, who would be knocking like that? Waltz swallowed. My assistant. Imani's jaw dropped. Assistant? Your what? Zanaya's eyes widened. Waltz, what's going on? The knock came again, firm, direct, unmistakably official. Zanaya looked between the door and the man standing quietly in her living room. And for the first time since she met him, she wondered. Who exactly had she brought into her home? Frantic, but it carried purpose, steady, controlled, unmistakably familiar to Waltz. The knocking at the door grew sharper the longer it echoed through the living room. It wasn't. Zanaya felt the tension rise in her chest as she looked from the door to the man standing beside her. Waltz's posture had changed. He wasn't afraid, but he stood straighter, shoulders pulled back in a way she hadn't seen before. The shift was small but undeniable. Imani whispered, Girl, he's not reacting like a regular person with a visitor. Who knocks like that? Waltz exhaled slowly, then met Zanaya's eyes. It's for me, he said quietly. There was no hiding in his voice, no attempt to soften the truth. Zanaya blinked. For you? Who would be He didn't answer, because they all knew the moment she opened the door, it would speak for itself. She reached for the knob, her heart pacing faster than she expected. The door swung open, and there stood Patel, polished, composed, dressed in an expensive suit that didn't match the casual nature of their neighborhood. He held a sleek briefcase in one hand, and a phone in the other. His gaze landed directly on Waltz. "Sir," Patel said with visible relief. "Thank goodness." The title hung in the air. "Sir, not buddy, not man, not friend. Sir." Imani's jaw dropped, and her eyes darted to Waltz so fast her braids swung over her shoulder. Nope. Nope. I knew something was off. Zanaya didn't speak. Not yet. She simply stepped back, letting Patel walk inside while her mind raced. Waltz took a few steps forward, leaning slightly on the couch for balance with his injured ankle. "Patel," he said in a subdued tone, "thank you for coming." "Of course," Patel replied, adjusting his glasses. "We were extremely concerned when we lost contact with you. I have your identification, your spare phone, and the items you requested." He opened the briefcase and handed Waltz a phone with practiced precision, as if this wasn't the first time he'd needed to deliver essentials in a hurry. Imani elbowed Zanaya and whispered loudly, "Essentials? Girl, this man has a whole butler." Waltz flinched at the word, though he kept his eyes on Zanaya, waiting, bracing, for her reaction. Patel turned toward her with a warm nod. "Ms. Zanaya, thank you for assisting Mr. Waltz. The entire team is grateful." Team, another word that said more than he intended. Zanaya felt the room blur for a moment. She wasn't angry. She didn't sense deceit or danger, but she felt something shift beneath her feet. The man she'd shared breakfast with hours ago now stood in front of her as someone, larger than the quiet, stranded stranger she had helped. Waltz moved closer, watching her carefully. "Can we talk?" he asked softly. Imani stepped back, crossing her arms but staying close enough to intervene if needed. She wasn't hostile, just protective. Zanaya nodded slowly, swallowing the lump forming in her throat. "Yeah, we should talk." They moved to the far side of the living room, where the light from the window fell gently on both of them. Waltz held his new phone in one hand, but he set it aside immediately, as if it were a symbol he didn't want standing between them. He ran a hand through his hair, searching for the right words. "I never meant for you to find out like this." Zanaya met his eyes. "Who are you, Waltz?" He inhaled sharply, then let the truth settle between them. "My full name is Waltz Cunningham," he said. "I own a large company. Multiple, actually. I was here in Baltimore for business meetings. Yesterday. I walked out to clear my head. I wasn't dressed the way people usually see me, and when things went wrong on the street, I didn't want to pull out titles or status to fix it." He paused. "I wanted to exist as a person, not a position." Zanaya listened quietly, no judgment on her face, just concentration. "You let me believe you were just passing through," she said gently. "I know." His voice softened with vulnerability. "I wasn't trying to hide from you. I was trying to hide from the world for one moment. Everything has been so loud, so demanding, so complicated. And then you showed up. You spoke to me like a human being. You helped me without questioning who I was or what I had." He swallowed hard, the weight of his honesty settling heavily. "I didn't tell you because I was afraid it would change how you looked at me. And I didn't want to lose the only genuine connection I've felt in a long time." Imani's expression softened, just a little. Zanaya's breath shuddered, not from hurt, but from empathy. "I'm not upset," she said slowly. "Just surprised. It's a lot." Her hand instinctively touched her belly, grounding her. "You should have told me when we got to the house," she added. "Not after your assistant walked in dressed like he stepped out of a corporate commercial." Waltz huffed a tired laugh. "You're right. I should have." He edged closer. "Not enough to crowd her, but enough to show sincerity. You deserve honesty. Going forward, you'll have it from me. No more withheld information. No more quiet avoidance." Her eyes softened. She wasn't angry, not even close, just processing, absorbing this new layer of a man she'd come to trust in less than a day. "Okay," she said quietly. "I believe you." He blinked, surprised. "You do?" "Yes," she said simply, "because nothing about you yesterday felt fake. You didn't act above me. You didn't act entitled. You were humble, kind, present." She paused. "If anything, I'm trying to understand how someone with so much responsibility ended up on a Baltimore sidewalk with groceries rolling away." For the first time since Patel arrived, Walt smiled, soft, grateful, a little fragile. "I was having a bad day," he admitted. "And maybe I needed to be humbled." She nodded. "Life has a way of doing that." Finally, Zanaya said, "We'll figure this out, but I need a little time to process everything." Waltz nodded immediately. "Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere." Patel cleared his throat lightly from the doorway. "Mr. Waltz, the car is ready whenever you are." Waltz glanced at him, then back at Zanaya. "I'll go if you want me to," he said. "But I'll come back. Only if you're comfortable." She held his gaze, steady and warm. "Come back tomorrow." Relief washed over him so clearly that even Imani eased her folded arms. "Tomorrow?" he repeated, and even though his world was waiting outside in a sleek black car, he looked like a man who had found something far more meaningful inside this modest home. The house grew quieter the moment Patel stepped out, leaving the door open just long enough for the crisp afternoon air to drift in. Waltz lingered inside the doorway, one hand resting on the frame, waiting, hoping, unsure of what expression he might see on Zanaya's face next. Imani watched like a hawk from the living room, arms folded, foot tapping with enough rhythm to rival a drumline. She wasn't hostile anymore, but she was alert, protective in the way only a lifelong friend could be. Zanaya took a slow breath, letting her hand glide down her belly as if steadying herself. Her baby shifted gently beneath her palm. She didn't feel angry toward Waltz, but she felt the weight of the truth pressing into her shoulders, heavier than she expected. Waltz took a cautious step toward her. "If you're overwhelmed," he said softly, "I understand." She nodded, her gaze drifting to the spot on the floor where he had stood last night while she handed him a blanket, where he had thanked her with gentle sincerity. Everything had felt simple then, real, comfortable. Now that simplicity felt fragile. "I just need a little air," she murmured. Waltz immediately stepped aside so she could move past him. The shift was subtle but telling. He wasn't trying to sway her or follow her out. He gave her space before she even asked for it. Zanaya stepped onto her front porch. The afternoon sun washed the brick homes in warm gold as children rode bikes down the street and a dog barked lazily from a nearby yard. Normal life surrounded her, grounding her. She wrapped her arms loosely around her belly, more out of thought than discomfort, a millionaire, in her home, sleeping on her couch, eating pancakes off her dollar store plates. It almost felt unreal. But the man himself? The man she had held up on the sidewalk? The man who ate quietly beside her, offered to take out her trash, and laughed at her terrible cooking jokes. That part was real. That part felt familiar. That part mattered more than the money ever could. Behind her, footsteps approached. Not heavy, cautious. Waltz stopped beside her, but kept a respectful distance. "If you want me to leave now, I will. I just want to say something first." She didn't look at him yet. "Go ahead." He clasped his hands in front of him, not in a polished business gesture, in a nervous one, the kind you'd see from a man afraid of losing something he never expected to find. "When you brought me home yesterday," he began, voice soft, "I felt something I haven't felt in a long time. Safety, calm, humanity." He inhaled. "You treated me like someone worth helping. Not because of what I have or where I come from, but because I needed it." She finally met his eyes. His sincerity had a way of softening the edges around her heart. "I didn't want to lie," he continued. "I just wanted to be normal, even if only for a day." A faint smile tugged at her lips. You're still normal, Waltz. Maybe, he replied with a hesitant chuckle, just with an unfortunate job description. The joke broke a sliver of the tension. She shook her head, amused despite herself. I'm not mad, she said. I just needed the truth. You have it now, he promised. All of it. For a quiet moment, they stood together on the porch, two people from worlds that shouldn't collide, yet somehow had. Zanaya rolled her eyes. Imani, I can see you. The blinds snapped shut instantly. Waltz huffed a laugh under his breath. She's very devoted. She loves me, Zanaya replied, and she doesn't trust easily. I don't blame her, he said. I walked into your life, unusual circumstances and all. He paused. But I want her to trust me too. Eventually. Zanaya looked up at him. His sincerity wasn't polished. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't corporate. It was the kind that came from a man who wanted a chance, not a transaction. She exhaled slowly. I think we both need some time. Today was a lot. He nodded. Of course. I'm not pushing you away, she added quickly. I just need a moment to understand everything. His relief was visible. Take everything you need. I'm grateful you're not shutting the door on me. She offered a small smile. Not even close. He stepped back, collecting the phone Patel handed him earlier. I should go. Let you rest. She looked down at her belly. Rest sounds nice. He walked toward the doorway, but something in her chest tightened as he reached for the handle. Waltz, she said softly. He turned immediately. Come back tomorrow. A warmth spread across his features, not dramatic, not overwhelming. Just real. I will. He hesitated, then asked quietly, Can I hug you goodbye? The question alone softened her breath. She nodded. He approached slowly, mindful of her belly. His arms wrapped around her in a careful, warm embrace, gentle enough not to cause discomfort, firm enough to say he meant every unspoken word between them. When they separated, neither rushed. He stepped outside, waved once, and followed Patel to the waiting car. The door closed with a quiet thud, and the vehicle pulled away from the curb. Zanaya remained on the porch for a moment, her hand resting over her heart. Inside, Imani's voice called out, Girl, if you don't tell me everything right now, I'm moving in. Zanaya laughed, a soft, relieved sound, then walked inside feeling both unsettled and oddly hopeful. The story wasn't ending. It was shifting. It was deepening. And somewhere down the street, Waltz looked back at the shrinking row houses through the car window, whispering to himself, I'll make this right. Darling viewers, if you believe kindness can truly change lives, comment below and let me know you're still watching. Morning settled over Baltimore with a soft glow, the kind that made the city feel calmer than usual. Zanaya stepped out of her apartment dressed comfortably, one hand resting on her belly as if to reassure the little one inside that everything was under control, or at least on its way there. She wasn't nervous. Not exactly. But there was a flutter in her chest that wasn't from pregnancy. It was the quiet anticipation of seeing Waltz again, now that the truth stood between them instead of the mystery. The coffee shop they agreed on was only a short walk from her home, a local Baltimore spot she loved for the warmth, the cinnamon scent, and the way everyone knew everyone. The kind of place where people waved when you walked in, even if they didn't know your name. She pushed the door open, the bell chiming softly. And there he was. Waltz sat at a small corner table near the window, looking nothing like the polished businessman she'd expected. No suit. No watch that cost more than her monthly rent. Just simple jeans, a soft gray sweater, and the same gentle expression she recognized from yesterday. He stood carefully when he saw her, a small smile forming. Zanaya. She returned the smile as she crossed the room. Good morning. Good morning, he echoed, pulling out her chair before taking his seat. The gesture wasn't fancy, just thoughtful. A waitress came over. The usuals in? Decaf latte today, she said, then added with a small laugh. Doctor's orders. The waitress turned to Waltz. And you? He hesitated. Just a regular coffee. Zanaya hid a smile. He didn't know how to order here. Not yet. But the effort mattered. When the drinks arrived and the waitress stepped away, the air between them settled. Not tense, not distant. Just ready. So, Zanaya began, wrapping her hands around the warm cup. How's your ankle today? Waltz looked down, lifting his leg slightly. Much better. Still tender, but manageable. Good. He held her gaze for a moment before speaking again. Thank you for meeting me. Thank you for coming, she replied softly. There was a pause, one that wasn't empty, just full of everything neither of them had said yet. Waltz leaned forward a bit. I've been thinking a lot about yesterday, about how everything unfolded. She nodded. Me too. His expression softened. I'm sorry if I made you feel like I wasn't being truthful. That was never my intention. I know, she said gently. I didn't feel lied to, just surprised. That's fair. And to be honest, she added, I think part of me needed the night to separate the man from the circumstances. He tilted his head. And what did you decide? She looked down at her latte, then back at him. You're still the man who needed help on the sidewalk. The one who cared if I was walking too much yesterday. The one who laughed at the baby clothes Imani threw in your face. He laughed softly at that. She was intense. That's her default setting, Sanaya replied, smiling. His laughter faded into something more tender. It means a lot that you still want to see me. I didn't sleep much last night, not because of work. Because I kept thinking I'd ruined something before it had a chance. Her heart nudged at her ribs, warm and full. You didn't ruin anything, she assured him. But I do want honesty between us, all the time. You'll have it, he said instantly. I promise. The directness of his answer startled her in the best way. Not rehearsed, not polished, just sincere. She took a small sip of her drink. So, what happens now? You're a busy man. I'm about to have a whole human. He chuckled, nodding. We take it one day at a time. If you're willing. Her eyes searched his for a long moment, and what she saw made her shoulders relax. A man who wasn't trying to impress her, overwhelm her, or sweep her into anything too fast. A man who simply wanted to show up. I'm willing, she said finally. A soft smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. Warmer, deeper, fuller than the polite smiles he'd tried to hide behind yesterday. His fingers brushed the edge of his cup. I know our worlds look very different, but I want you to know, I like who I am around you. I feel grounded. Real. Her pulse fluttered. Honestly, she whispered, I like who I am around you too. The confession hung between them like a spark, small but bright. His eyes softened further. Can I say something without you thinking I'm jumping ahead? She nodded slowly. I want to be here for you, he said quietly. Not because you helped me, not because I feel obligated, but because I care about you, and I care about the baby too. She inhaled sharply. Not shocked, just struck by the gentleness in his tone. Waltz, you don't have to respond, he added quickly. I just wanted you to know. She reached across the table, not dramatically, not nervously, and rested her hand lightly over his. It was the first time she initiated physical contact between them. And it said everything. I'm glad you told me, she murmured. Because I care too. A soft silence followed, not heavy, comforting, hopeful, quietly electric. Outside the window, morning sunlight spilled along the sidewalk as people hurried by, unaware that inside this small Baltimore cafe, two very different lives were beginning to intertwine. Not because of chance, but because of choice, because of honesty, because of kindness. Walt squeezed her hand gently. Tomorrow? Coffee again? She smiled. Tomorrow. And for the first time since they met, there was no doubt between them. Only a quiet, growing connection. Neither of them was willing to ignore. Sunday morning arrived with the kind of gentle calm that wrapped the neighborhood in comfort. The sunlight stretched across the Baltimore row houses, warming the sidewalk as families prepared for church. The air smelled faintly of distant breakfast cooking. Grits, turkey bacon, warm biscuits, the familiar soundtrack of a Black American Sunday. Zainaya stood in front of her mirror smoothing her dress, one hand on her belly, the other adjusting the soft curls near her cheek. She looked peaceful, but there was a quiet flutter beneath that calm, the awareness that Waltz would be stepping deeper into her world today. "Girl," Imani said from the bedroom doorway, "you look cute. Waltz is gonna faint." Zainaya rolled her eyes, smiling. "He's just coming to church. Calm down." "Church is serious bonding energy," Imani replied. "If a man shows up there, he's interested." Before Zainaya could argue, a knock sounded at the door. She took a steady breath and opened. Waltz stood on the porch wearing a simple button-down shirt and slacks. Nothing flashy, nothing loud. Just respectful, clean, and thoughtful. He held a small gift bag. "For you," he said softly. "It's just vitamins. The prenatal kind the doctor said were good. I bought the ones she recommended." Her eyes softened instantly. "Thank you, Waltz. That's thoughtful." He smiled shyly. "I don't want to overstep. I just care." The words landed gently, warming her. "Come in," she said. They drove toward her family's church in an older SUV borrowed from Imani's cousin. It rattled at red lights and hummed loud enough to make them laugh, but Waltz didn't seem bothered. If anything, he looked relaxed. "This is different from the cars you're used to," she teased. "It has charm," he replied, smiling. "And it gets us to church." She laughed. "You're adapting well." "I'm learning," he said, "and I like learning about your world." Her heartbeat fluttered again, not fearfully, but gently, like a door opening. The moment they stepped inside, the sanctuary came alive around them. Choir rehearsal warming up, ushers greeting families, children running toward Sunday school. The space was filled with vibrant color, warm energy, and the joy of community. Waltz paused at the entrance, momentarily overwhelmed. Not in discomfort, in awe. "It's beautiful," he whispered. "It is," she agreed. "This place raised me." One of the ushers, Mrs. Lattimore, spotted her instantly. "Well, look at God. Zainaya, baby, come here." She wrapped her in a warm hug, then stopped abruptly when she noticed Waltz standing beside her. She tilted her head with playful suspicion. "And who is this fine gentleman?" Waltz straightened. "I'm Waltz. A friend." Mrs. Lattimore eyed him head to toe, then turned to Zainaya with a whisper that wasn't fully a whisper. "A friend? All right, now." Zainaya blushed. Waltz smiled politely. They followed her down the aisle to their seats. The choir launched into a lively number that made people clap, sway, and shout. Waltz looked amazed. He had never witnessed black church culture up close. "You okay?" she asked softly. He nodded. "I love it. The energy. It's real." She smiled. "Yeah. It's home." During the sermon, the pastor spoke about unexpected blessings. How people come into our lives not by accident, but by purpose. Zainaya felt each word pulling at her heart. When she glanced sideways, she saw Waltz watching the pastor with deep respect, fully present, fully listening, not pretending, not performing, just being. Something inside her melted a little more. After service, her family invited them over for Sunday dinner, and no one cooked small. The table was covered in cornbread, baked chicken, collard greens, mac and cheese, candied yams. The works. He smiled. "I'll do my best." When he tasted the mac and cheese, his eyes widened slightly. "This is incredible." Her family laughed proudly. Zainaya watched him closely during dinner, how he asked questions about her childhood, how he complimented her cousins, how he laughed at her uncle's jokes. He blended in without forcing himself into the center. Her mother eventually leaned close to her and whispered, "I like him, baby. He seems gentle." Zainaya felt warmth fill her chest. "He is." Waltz caught her eyes from across the table, offering a small, subtle smile meant only for her. Something shifted then, Not loudly, not dramatically, but surely, softly. They were growing close, effortlessly, meaningfully. Later, as Waltz walked her up to her porch, he held the bags from dinner her mother insisted she take. Today had been long, warm, full, in a way he hadn't felt in years. "I learned a lot today," he said. "About my world?" "Yes," he nodded. "But more about you." Her breath hitched slightly. "Oh, you're surrounded by love," he said softly. "And now I understand why you give it so freely." Her heart swelled in her chest. He stepped closer, but not too close, letting her decide the distance. "I'm honored you let me be part of today," he said. "And I'm glad you came," she whispered. A moment of silence followed, not empty, but charged with gentle tension, the kind that hinted at something blooming between them. He reached out slowly, brushing his fingers along the back of her hand. "Tomorrow?" he asked. She nodded. "Tomorrow." And in the quiet of that evening, beneath the warm hum of the streetlights, something tender wrapped around both of them. Something that neither title nor status could touch. The night settled quietly over Baltimore, warm and still. Inside her apartment, Zanaya shifted on the couch, trying to find a comfortable position. Her belly felt heavier than usual, tight, stretched, and restless. She rubbed her hand across the curve, humming softly to calm herself, and the little one inside. Walt sat nearby assembling a small baby bassinet, brows furrowed in concentration as he twisted one of the metal pieces into place. "I swear," he muttered, "this thing requires an engineering degree." A tired laugh slipped from her. "You're doing fine." He looked up, smiling at the sound of her laughter. But the smile faded when he noticed the strain in her eyes. "You all right? You look uncomfortable." "I'm okay," she said, even though she wasn't entirely sure. "Just pressure. Normal at this stage." Walt set the tool down immediately and moved closer. "Talk to me." But before she could reassure him again, a sudden sharp cramp shot through her abdomen. She gasped, grabbing the arm of the couch for support. "Zanaya?" His voice shifted instantly, deeper, urgent. "What's wrong?" The tightening grew stronger, gripping her from inside. She tried breathing through it, but her chest trembled. I don't know. It's more than earlier." Another wave hit, sharper, forcing a small cry from her throat. Waltz was beside her in seconds. "We're going to the hospital. Right now." She shook her head, breath unsteady. "It might just be Braxton Hicks." "That didn't look like a practice anything," he countered, already helping her sit up slowly. "Tell me where your hospital bag is." "In the closet." She managed through another contraction. He bolted toward the bedroom, grabbed the bag and returned just as she shifted forward, breathing harder now. Fear crept into her eyes. Not panic, but the fear of the unknown. The fear that every soon-to-be mother feels when her body begins speaking louder than her thoughts. Waltz cupped her hand gently. "I've got you. We're going. You and the baby are going to be okay." His steady tone anchored her. She nodded shakily. "Help me up." He lifted her carefully, supporting her weight with one arm wrapped around her back and the other guiding her step by step. She leaned into him, trusting him completely, trusting that he wouldn't let her fall or falter. The moment they reached his SUV, Waltz opened the passenger door and helped her inside. He buckled her seatbelt, brushing her hand reassuringly. "I'm right here." "No matter what." She squeezed his fingers before he shut the door. Once inside, he started the engine with trembling hands, something he tried to hide but couldn't. His shoulders were tight with fear, jaw clenched, as he reversed onto the road. "Breathes in," he said softly. "In through your nose. Slowly out through your mouth." "Trying," she whispered. A contraction hit hard. She gripped the side handle, eyes squeezing shut. Waltz's heart slammed into his ribs. Seeing her in pain tore through him in a way he didn't expect. "Talk to me," he pleaded. "Tell me how close they are." She checked her watch between breaths. "Every 4 minutes." He pressed the gas a little harder. Not reckless, but faster than usual. Streetlights passed in blurs as he navigated through the Baltimore roads. His focus was razor sharp, except for the moments he glanced at her. Fear tightening his throat every time her face contorted in pain. "Stay with me," he said. "I'm taking you straight inside as soon as we get there." Another wave surged through her. She leaned forward, gasping. "Walt, I'm here. I'm here," he repeated, voice thick with anxiety. Inside his chest, a storm raged. What if something went wrong? What if he lost her? What if the baby came too early? He swallowed hard, gripping the wheel. No. He wouldn't let anything happen to them. As soon as he pulled into the hospital entrance, Waltz parked crookedly, half in a loading zone, but he didn't care. He ran to her side, opened the door, and helped her out. She clung to his arm, breathing in rapid bursts. A nurse near the entrance saw them and rushed forward. "Is she in labor?" "Early contractions," Waltz said quickly. "Every 4 minutes." The nurse grabbed a wheelchair. "Let's get her inside." Waltz helped settle her into the chair, brushing a loose curl from her face. "I'll be right behind you." She grabbed his hand before the nurse could push her away. Don't go far." His eyes softened, voice low. "I won't leave you. Ever." The nurse wheeled her through the bright hallway while Waltz stayed close, matching their pace with long strides. His heart hammered as he watched her breathing tense, her hands gripping the armrests. Once inside the labor triage room, nurses hooked her to monitors, checked her vitals, and examined her with efficient urgency. Waltz stood at the foot of the bed, hands clasped tightly. A doctor stepped in. "She's showing signs of early labor. We'll try to slow it down, but she may progress. We'll keep monitoring." Waltz's stomach dropped. "Is the baby okay?" he asked, voice raw. "So far, yes," the doctor replied calmly. "But we need to keep her comfortable and watch closely." Waltz moved to Zanaya's side immediately, taking her hand. "You're doing amazing," he whispered. A contraction racked her body. She gritted her teeth, squeezing his fingers with surprising strength. He leaned close, forehead nearly touching hers. "I'm right here. Breathe, darling. I'm right here." His voice steadied her more than the medicine drip beside her bed. Her pain eased briefly, and she opened her eyes, glassy but focused on him. "You're scared," she said weakly. He swallowed hard. "Terrified, but you're still here." He nodded, tightening his hold. "There's nowhere else I could be." And in that moment, surrounded by monitors, nurses, and the urgent hum of the maternity ward, something unspoken, but undeniably powerful, passed between them. Not just care, not just connection, but love beginning to take its full shape. And Waltz knew without question that he would fight for her and the baby with every part of him. The hospital room felt smaller as the night stretched on, the soft beeping of the monitors syncing with the rhythm of Zanaya's breathing. The contractions grew stronger, closer together, her body working with a force she could not control, only endure. Nurses moved calmly around her, adjusting equipment, checking her progress, speaking in gentle tones meant to soothe and focus her. Waltz never left her side. Not for a second. Not even to sit. He stood next to the bed, one hand wrapped around hers, thumb brushing across her knuckles in slow, steady strokes. Every time a contraction tightened through her, she gripped him with a strength that nearly pulled him forward. And each time, he whispered reassurance like it was the only language he knew. "You're doing so well. Breathe, Zanaya. I'm with you. You're not alone, darling." Her hair clung to her forehead, damp with effort, but her eyes, tired as they were, found his again and again, pulling courage from the steady calm he forced himself to maintain. A nurse checked her progress and nodded. "She's almost fully dilated. It won't be much longer." Waltz felt his pulse race at those words. Excitement. Fear. Awe. All tangled together. Zanaya swallowed, her voice weak. "Waltz, I'm scared." He leaned down, pressing his forehead gently against hers, their breaths mingling in a quiet moment of unity. "I know," he whispered, "but you're stronger than this moment, and you're not doing it alone." Her eyes fluttered shut as another wave hit, longer, sharper than the ones before. She cried out, the sound breaking something inside him. He wanted to take the pain for her, carry it, break it apart with his own hands. Instead, he held her hand tighter, grounding her. A doctor stepped in. It's time. When the next contraction comes, you push. Tears welled in her eyes. I don't know if I can. You can, Walt said immediately, his voice choked but firm. You absolutely can. And the baby? She gasped. They're coming, the doctor assured her. The heartbeat looked strong. The words steadied her. Barely. But enough. The contraction hit hard, tearing through her like a wave crashing against rock. Push, Zanaya, the doctor instructed. She bore down, releasing a cry that echoed through the room, her entire body trembling with effort. Waltz held her hand so tightly his knuckles went white. That's it, the nurse encouraged. You're doing amazing. Another contraction, another push. Another cry that sounded both powerful and desperate. Waltz wiped her forehead gently, voice trembling as he whispered, You're almost there. You're so strong. I'm right here, right here. Between contractions, she sagged back against the pillows, chest rising and falling rapidly. I can't, she gasped. Yes, you can, he said, bending so their eyes met. Look at me. You're bringing life into the world. You're doing something miraculous. I'm in awe of you. A tear rolled down her cheek, not of fear, but of the truth she heard in his voice. The next contraction came, and she pushed again with everything she had left. The doctor's tone changed, urgent but excited. I see the head. One more push. Waltz's heart nearly burst. One more, he whispered. Just one more, darling. I'm here. She drew in a shaking breath and pushed with every ounce of strength she possessed. A cry filled the room. Small, sharp, beautiful. Zanaya sobbed in relief. Waltz exhaled a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. The doctor lifted the tiny baby, announcing softly, You have a beautiful baby. Perfectly healthy. They placed the newborn on Zanaya's chest. Her hands trembled as she touched the tiny body, warm, soft, crying with life. Oh, she whispered, tears falling freely now. Hi, baby. Hi, my little one. Walt stepped closer, eyes glistening. The world felt blurry, distant, as though everything outside this room had gone silent. All he could see was the woman who had saved him, now holding the life she had carried with unimaginable courage. You did it, he murmured. You actually did it. His voice cracked. Zanaya looked up at him, exhausted but glowing with a love so pure it made his chest ache. Thank you, she whispered, for not leaving. He shook his head, overwhelmed. There was never a chance I would leave. A nurse gently adjusted blankets around the baby and checked their temperature before nodding. Perfect. Healthy. Everything looks wonderful. Waltz reached out, hesitating for permission. Zanaya gave a tiny nod. He placed a careful hand atop the baby's back, barely touching, but the warmth of that tiny form shot straight into his heart. Something inside him shifted, settled, chose. He looked at Zanaya, eyes full, voice low and reverent. You and this baby, you're everything that matters to me right now. Her breath caught. Not because of surprise, because she felt the same truth rising inside her. She rested her head back against the pillow, still holding the baby tight, and Waltz brushed a curl from her forehead with a tenderness that made her eyes close in calm. He sat beside her bed, refusing to move even when the nurses encouraged him to rest. No, he said softly. I'm staying with her. He stayed, holding her hand, watching over her, protecting both mother and child with a devotion he didn't bother hiding anymore, because the moment that tiny cry filled the room, love became undeniable. For both of them. The morning after delivery brought a gentle quiet to the maternity room. Soft sunlight filtered in through the blinds, painting warm lines across the foot of the bed. Zanaya sat propped against pillows, exhaustion and joy sharing equal space in her expression. Her newborn rested against her chest, wrapped securely in a hospital blanket, tiny breaths warm against her skin. Waltz sat beside the bed, leaning toward her with reverent attention. He hadn't slept, refusing to miss even a moment, but he didn't look tired. If anything, he looked renewed, softened, almost transformed by the long night. You ready to take your little one home? He asked quietly. Zanaya glanced down at the baby, smiling through her fatigue. More than ready. A nurse entered with discharge papers. "Everything looks great. Your baby's vitals are perfect. You two are good to go." Walt signed whatever needed signing without hesitation. His protective instinct was unmistakable. He stayed close, attentive, ready to assist before she even asked. When they finally stepped outside the hospital, Baltimore air filled their lungs, fresh, cool, grounding. Waltz carried the diaper bag across his shoulder and carefully installed the infant carrier in the back seat of his SUV. Zainaya settled into the passenger seat with slow movements, cradling her postpartum tenderness. Waltz closed her door gently, checking twice that it latched properly. "You good?" he asked softly. She nodded. "Let's go home." As soon as the SUV pulled in front of her apartment, the curtains of the living room fluttered. Imani. Of course. Before they even reached the door, it swung open dramatically. "There they are. My babies are home," she shouted, waving her hands like she was greeting celebrities. Zainaya laughed, stepping inside slowly while Waltz carried the carrier. The apartment smelled like fresh food. Mac and cheese, cornbread, chicken stew, everything comforting. "Did you cook all this?" Zainaya asked, stunned. Imani lifted her chin proudly. "Your girl did. Because somebody has to make sure you eat more than crackers and juice packs." Her eyes shifted to Waltz's direction, narrowing playfully. "And you, Daddy Energy, come inside too. You ain't slick standing by that door." Waltz froze. "Daddy Energy?" Imani waved him in. "You heard me. Bring yourself inside." Zainaya covered her face, laughing. "Imani, please." "What?" Imani shrugged. "If that man didn't look like he was pacing the hospital floor all night praying over you, I'll give you my whole paycheck." Waltz blinked, cheeks warming. "I was worried. Both of them matter to me." Imani's teasing expression softened at that. "Good answer, Waltz. Now put that baby right here so I can see their little face." Waltz gently placed the carrier on the couch. Imani peeked inside, immediately melting. "Oh my goodness. Look at this tiny nose. Look at these cheeks. I'm obsessed already." Zainaya eased herself onto the couch, wincing slightly. Waltz noticed instantly and adjusted a pillow behind her lower back. "Better?" he asked. She nodded gratefully. "Much?" Waltz cleared his throat. "I'm just helping however I can." "Helping?" Imani repeated. "Sir, you've been hovering like a warm blanket since the hospital. Don't play modest now." Zainaya rolled her eyes affectionately. "Imani will never let you breathe normally again." "Never," Imani confirmed, grinning. Hey, you're okay. We're right here." He said it as if the newborn understood every word, as if reassurance itself could cradle them. Zainaya watched him with a look she hadn't fully allowed herself to feel until now, something warm, hopeful, and undeniably deep. Seeing him hold her child with such tenderness tugged at a place inside her she thought was closed off. "You can hold them," she said. Waltz paused. "Are you sure?" She nodded. He washed his hands at the sink, drying them with slow, careful motions. Then he returned to the baby, sliding his arms beneath the tiny form with steady, gentle confidence. The newborn settled almost immediately against his chest. His breath caught. His entire demeanor softened. "This is," he swallowed, "the most incredible thing I've ever felt." Zainaya blinked away unexpected tears. "Yeah, it is." Imani placed a hand over her heart. "Lord, if this man ain't smitten." Waltz sat beside Zainaya, rocking the newborn lightly. He looked at the baby, then at her, and something like devotion filled his expression. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what?" she asked quietly. "For letting me be here. For letting me share this moment." Her eyes shimmered. "You earned it." For the next couple of hours, their home became a gentle celebration. Soft chatter, warm food, quiet laughter so the baby wouldn't wake. Family members visited briefly, offering gifts and prayers. Each person who entered saw the same thing. Waltz never left Zanaya's side. He moved with her pace. He carried things before she asked. He checked her comfort constantly. He held the baby like the world depended on it, Even her father, a man slow to trust, pulled Waltz aside and nodded with approval. "You treat my daughter with respect. That's all that matters." Waltz nodded, humbled. "Yes, sir." And that was it, her father's acceptance. By early evening, the apartment grew quiet again. Just the three of them. A new family, whether labeled or not, sharing space, breathing the same calm air, navigating this life-changing moment together. Zanaya rested her head back, fighting drowsiness. "It's so strange, being home with the baby." Waltz shifted closer. "You're doing beautifully. Both of you are." She smiled softly. "You too." He glanced at the newborn sleeping in his arms. "I don't want to put them down." "You don't have to," she whispered. Not yet, and in that still, warm room, a new beginning took shape around them. Quiet, certain, undeniable. The apartment had quieted after the wave of visitors faded, leaving behind only soft lamplight, the faint hum of the refrigerator, and the peaceful breaths of the newborn sleeping in the bassinet beside the couch. Night settled gently over the room, wrapping everything in a cocoon of calm. Zanaya sat reclined with her legs curled beneath a blanket, her body still recovering, her heart full in ways she wasn't prepared to describe out loud. Waltz sat close enough that their shoulders occasionally brushed, but not too close, gentle in his awareness of her physical exhaustion. He kept glancing at the bassinet as if making sure the baby was still there, still safe, still breathing, still real. "You keep checking," she teased softly. He smiled, a quiet, humbled grin. "I can't help it. I've never felt something like this." She rested her head against the cushion, studying him. His hair was mussed from running his hands through it all day. His shirt was wrinkled. His eyes were tired, but bright in a way that only comes from purpose. "You've been amazing today," she said. "Really? Have I?" His voice softened. "I kept worrying I wasn't doing enough." "Waltz." Her tone wrapped around his name, soft but sincere. "You didn't leave my side. You didn't flinch once. You didn't panic when I did." He swallowed, looking down for a moment. "I was terrified." "Really?" "More than I've ever been in my life," he admitted. "But even in that fear, I knew I wasn't going anywhere." The honesty hung between them, warm and steady. She shifted slightly, exhaling through the soreness. "You don't have to stay tonight. I know you're exhausted." "I'm staying," he said immediately. The firmness in his tone caught her off guard. Her brows rose slightly. "Unless," he added quietly, "you genuinely want space." She shook her head lightly. "No, I don't." Relief softened the hard line of his shoulders. They sat in gentle silence for a few minutes, long enough for the newborn to wiggle, sigh, and settle again. Waltz leaned forward instinctively, watching the tiny motion with awe. "You fell for that baby fast," she said with a soft laugh. He turned to her, expression open in a way she rarely saw. "I fell the moment they were placed on your chest." Her breath caught. Her chest tightened in that subtle, beautiful way that always came before something important. Waltz inhaled slowly, as if gathering courage. "I need to say something to you, and I want to get the words right." She straightened slightly. "I'm listening." He shifted to face her fully, eyes steady, voice calm, but colored with emotion. "I'm not trying to rush your heart," he began, "or push you into something before you're ready. I know you just went through something huge. Your world has changed overnight, and I respect that." She nodded, appreciating the intention already unfolding in his tone. "But I need you to know," he continued, "that I'm here. Long term. Not just for the excitement of this moment, not just because today was intense, but because I care about you, deeply." Her lips parted in surprise, not because she doubted it, but because hearing it out loud made everything sharper, more real. "You and this baby," he went on, "matter to me in a way I wasn't prepared for. And I'm not asking you for a relationship tomorrow or next week or even next month. I just want you to know my intentions." He paused, searching her face with honesty that felt almost vulnerable. "I want to build something slow, steady, and real. I want to support you, not just financially, but emotionally. Consistently. You don't have to do any of this alone. Not while I'm here. Her eyes softened to glass. Waltz, he swallowed, voice lowering. I know your trust has been earned, not given lightly, and I want to earn more of it. I want to be the man who shows up, the man who makes your life easier, not harder. A tear slipped down her cheek, not one of sadness, but of overwhelming relief she hadn't realized she needed. He reached forward carefully, wiping it with his thumb. I want to give you a future where you never have to question if someone is staying. Her breath trembled. Do you really mean all this? I mean every word, he answered without hesitation. You saved me that day on the sidewalk, even though you didn't know who I was. You showed me kindness without expecting anything. You didn't hesitate. That changed something in me. She blinked slowly. I didn't save you, Waltz. I just did what felt right. He shook his head gently. No, you saved me in a way I can't explain yet, and I'm not walking away from that. His sincerity filled the room like warmth breaking through morning chill. Waltz shifted even closer, careful not to crowd her. You don't have to decide anything tonight, or tomorrow. Just let me show you. Let me prove this isn't temporary. Let me be here for both of you. Her chest rose with a shaky breath. I want you here, she said softly. His eyes glimmered, quiet joy flickering behind them. You do? Yes. The word came from a deep place. But I'm still healing. Physically, emotionally, and my focus is the baby. He nodded instantly. That's exactly why I want us to move slowly. I'm not here to complicate your life. I'm here to support it. A silence followed. Not empty, but full of agreement. Neither knew how to articulate yet. He exhaled with relief. So, we take things one day at a time. She smiled gently. One day at a time? Waltz leaned back just slightly, giving her space again, but his presence remained a protective, gentle weight beside her. After a moment, he glanced at the bassinet. Can I hold them again? She laughed softly. Of course. They already love you. He rose tenderly, lifted the newborn with the care of someone holding the world, and returned to sit beside her. The baby settled quietly against his chest, tiny fingers curling instinctively. He looked at the child for a long moment, then at Zanaya, his voice barely above a whisper. I'm not going anywhere. And she believed him. Not because of the promise, but because his presence in that moment was already proving it true. The early afternoon sun poured gently through the thin curtains of Zainaya's living room, casting a warm glow on the quiet scene. The newborn slept curled in the crook of Waltz's arm, his large hands supporting the tiny back with surprising gentleness. Each time the baby shifted, Waltz instinctively adjusted, moving with a steady patience that made Zanaya's chest swell with something she couldn't quite name yet. She sat close beside him, sipping lukewarm tea as her eyes lingered on the pair. It still amazed her how naturally he had folded into her life. Not with chaos, but with calm, with intention, with promise. You look like you've done this before, she whispered. Waltz chuckled, keeping his voice soft. This is the first time I've held a newborn for more than 10 minutes without panicking. Well, you're doing better than I was on day one, she teased lightly. He shifted his gaze toward her, taking in the faint exhaustion on her face, the quiet pride, the softness around her eyes. You're incredible, he murmured. I'm just trying, she replied. And succeeding, he said simply. They let silence settle again, comfortable, warm, full of the kind of understanding that comes from shared vulnerability. After a few minutes, Waltz exhaled with a mix of anticipation and nerves. Zanaya. There's something I've been thinking about for weeks now. Something I didn't want to mention until after you had the baby. She turned slightly, giving him her full attention. The baby's breathing stayed steady, unbothered by the shift. What is it? She asked, voice gentle. Waltz looked down at the tiny hand resting near his wrist, then back at her. You once told me you had to put your promotion on hold, that you were building a career before everything changed. She nodded. Yeah, I had to choose, and the baby comes first. Her brows lifted slightly. That day at the baby store, he continued, I watched how you made decisions. Practical, smart, thoughtful. You weren't just buying things. You were planning, organizing, prioritizing. And when you talked about branding, about how stories shape people, it stuck with me. She blinked, unsure where this was heading. Waltz took a careful breath. I've been wanting to expand a creative division within my company for a long time. A storytelling-focused branch dedicated to community outreach, real-life narratives, and digital campaigns that bring value instead of noise. He paused, watching her carefully. And I want you to lead it. Her entire body froze, not in fear, but in stunned disbelief. Waltz. What? Lead it? Me? He nodded. Yes, you. I've seen how you think, how you communicate, how you connect with people, strangers even. You have a gift, a real one. And I want to invest in it. Her mouth parted slightly, but no words came out. He placed his free hand over hers. This isn't charity, this isn't pity. And it has nothing to do with us. He swallowed. This is business. I believe in your skill. You deserve a chance to grow it. Her voice wavered. But I just had a baby. My plate is full. I can't. You can, he said calmly, because this role will be built around your reality. Work from home options, flexible hours, a team you can rely on. I want you to grow, not burn out. She stared at him, overwhelmed. Why would you do all this? For me? Waltz's voice softened. Because your kindness didn't just help me that day. It changed my thinking. Reminded me to invest in people, not just projects. And because the world deserves what you can create. Emotion washed over her. Strong, unexpected cleansing. Waltz, I don't know what to say. You don't have to decide now, he whispered. Just think about it. This is your story. I want you to have the tools to write the chapters you want. Her eyes shimmered, tears forming but not falling. No one has ever believed in me like this. He brushed a knuckle gently along her cheek. Then let me be the first. For a moment neither spoke. The only sound was the baby's small breaths, soft and steady, a quiet blessing between them. Finally she exhaled shakily. You're serious. Completely. She placed her hand over her heart, grounding herself. Then, I'll think about it. I really will. That's all I ask. The baby stirred then, stretching tiny fingers toward the air. Waltz instinctively adjusted his hold, and when he lifted his gaze back to Zanaya, she saw something new in him. Certainty. Not just hope, not just affection, but commitment. Real, quiet, intentional commitment. Zanaya, he said softly, I care about you. I care about this baby, and I'm not here to replace anyone or rush anything, but I want to be part of your world. Not halfway, not conditionally. Fully. Her breath trembled. I want that too. But I'm scared. He nodded. I know. You've carried a lot by yourself. Let me carry some of it with you. Not to control your life, but to walk in it with you. A tear rolled down her cheek, but she smiled through it. Slow, intentional, remember? He smiled back. Always. She leaned closer, resting her head on his shoulder. He shifted the baby slightly so all three of them fit comfortably together. There, in the gentle quiet of her living room, a new family shape formed. Not forced, not rushed, but steady and real. After a long moment, she whispered, Waltz, thank you. He kissed the top of her head. For what? For proving that kindness really is powerful enough to rewrite everything. He tightened his arm around her. Kindness brought us here, he said, and it will carry us forward. A new beginning. A new family. A new story written from courage, compassion, and the unexpected beauty of showing up for someone when no one else would. Darling viewers, if this story touched your heart, like, comment, and subscribe, so you never miss stories like this one. Your support helps us share more life-changing tales.